That's a very unusual thing for a man who, as we see in Ukraine, never apologizes for anything or never admits a mistake. That shows a level of, I won't say desperation for Russia to keep its hold over these countries, but it's a show of the seriousness of Moscow's concern
Yeah.
about what's happening.
Further east now to Tajikistan, where President Putin has been attending the second Central Asia Summit. The Russian leader was met with a long list of grievances set out by the autocratic leader of Tajikistan. Analysis in the Times this evening points out that Putin was stone-faced and occasionally even chewing his tongue in apparent frustration. With Russia's attention distracted by war in Ukraine, China and the European Union are stepping up their efforts to challenge Russia's traditional dominance of the region. Is it just a matter of time before China entirely displaces Russia in the former Soviet Central Asian republics? Let's talk to Dr. Donald Jensen, former diplomat at the US Embassy in Moscow and adjunct professor at the Johns Hopkins University. Donald, hello.
Hello, thank
Hi.
you for having me
No,
on.
it's good. I'm really keen to talk about this because it's gone on beneath the radar of a lot of people today. How significant is this for President Putin? He's gone down to Dushanbe and he's got these stone-faced leaders complaining. What's at stake here?
Well, I think it's very significant. What's happening is that since the war in Ukraine began in particular, the plates are shifting in that region, as they are in many places, almost without Western attention and almost beyond what we can see, but they're shifting nonetheless. And what you're going from a region completely dominated by the I almost said USSR, completely dominated by the Russian Federation, say 10 or 15 years ago, to a much more nuanced set of relationships. And I thought it was very telling when Putin yesterday apologized for the shooting down of the Azerbaijan airliner. Putin does not go around apologizing to a lot of people, but it shows the heightened concern in Moscow of a region that is, let's say, finding a lot of partners who are not in Moscow to do their trading, to strip their energy to, and so forth. So this is a very significant development. I would say, however, that we should not expect Russia to be kicked out. We just have to see it now a multilateral kind of arena where China and, as you said, the EU and Turkey, as well as Russia, are now key players. And for the United States, even in the South Caucasus, where it's been influential in brokering a deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Not Central Asia, but close by.
It's fairly ironic that we're talking about China possibly supplanting Russia as a key influencer there, because didn't China and Russia talk very intensely in recent months about there being no limits to the extent to which they're going to support each other? Of course. And then, the Chinese and the Russians are together at each other's parades. What do you think is happening there?
Well, I think you people don't forget the phrase you just mentioned. There are no limits until there are. And what's happening in the China-Russia relationship is that they're not really friends. They are maybe partners with a small p. They are very much aligned on the war in Ukraine, but in different ways. But in Central Asia, the Chinese have a very distinctive approach, which is less aggressive, more based on economics, more based on boxing some of these countries in to long-term dependency on China. And that's very different than the way that Russia does it. I thought it was very interesting, Putin's comments this week about the need for scientific and economic and other kinds of cooperation. But, I mean, let's face it, the primary Russia relationship to China is imperial. The primary relationship is military, and Russia also uses a lot of workers from the region to man Russia's economy, now more in need than ever as Russia undergoes strain in its economy because of the war. But there are countervailing factors now that, in ways that the 5 Central Asian countries are pushing back. That did not happen 5 or 10 years ago, and it's cultural. The Kazakhs, our president is well known for using Kazakh rather than Russian at a recent public event. It's on terms of schooling and culture. All of these things show change. It's not always going to be to Russia's liking, and Russia will remain the dominant power. It's, after all, next door. But as different sets of relationships between these 5 countries and Russia are forming, and they're pushed to some extent by the presence of Turkey, China, as I said, to forcing Russia to accommodate, as they say, to the new realities.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that deal that was signed in April after the first EU summit on Central Asia. Brussels announced a 15 billion euro investment package to develop transport, infrastructure and access to raw materials. And we know about the Belt and Road Initiative of President Xi
Yeah, and
Jinping
in
of
fact,
China.
the EU was not very active in the region for many, many years,
Yeah.
and now they are. And part of the problem for Moscow is that they are under economic considerable strain, not only in the energy sector, but in the economy in general. So they don't have the kind of easy levers they used to have. I won't say beating these five countries' leaders over the head, but we know who the big dog on the block was, and
Right.
that's much less likely to happen, although they're still the biggest dog in the neighborhood.
Right. I'm just wondering how much room for maneuver, how much freedom the leaders of Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, all the stands have to say to Moscow, either explicitly or implicitly, hey, we stand on our own 2 feet, we're independent sovereign nations, let us do what we want. Can they, put their thumbs up to Putin and say, hey, we're still friends, but we're going our own way?
I think they would do that in a more quiet but determined way than that. And again, you can't lump all five in one bucket.
Yeah.
The Tajiks have a Russian air base, which both countries, Russia and Tajikistan, are trying to modernize. Turkmenistan is really pretty independent already. It's a very strong authoritarian regime. I'm not sure Putin thinks it's worth it to bully them as he might someplace else. And the Uzbeks have a long-standing tie to Moscow, cultural ties, economic ties. But Uzbekistan is a very large country, and it sees itself really as, I won't say the superpower of the region, but the most influential power in the region historically. And they often go toe-to-toe to Moscow and push back in ways they find useful for their own foreign policy. I hate to use the cliche multi-vector,
Yes.
but that's what's going on here. But again, that's quite a contrast from 10 or 15 years ago. Moscow can no longer take these countries for granted. Some are very rich in energy, for example. And you see the Putin apology, which I began with my comments. That's a very unusual thing for a man who, as we see in Ukraine, never apologizes for anything or never admits a mistake. That shows a level of, I won't say desperation for Russia to keep its hold over these countries, but it's a show of the seriousness of Moscow's concern about what's happening. Russia is in its heart and in its mind still an empire, and if you lose these countries and become just the Russian Federation, it's a smaller but still important development that rivals Ukraine's effort to break to the West. So the Russians are very aware of this, and they use the leverage they have when they can. And sometimes, most notably in Tajikistan and in Kyrgyzstan, these countries are quite willing to cooperate, even if they're teaching more Kyrgyz language in the schools to the new upcoming generation.
Sure. Right.
It's a very, very complicated and interesting development.
Very complicated. You explained it beautifully. Thank you very much to Dr. Donald Jensen, former diplomat at the US Embassy in Moscow and adjunct professor at the Johns Hopkins University. Thank you for that.